Welcome everybody to the Life, Death and Happiness podcast. This podcast is all about real talks with real people. Why? Because some stories just need to be told. In each episode, I will sit down and talk with my guest about how it is to live with an incurable disease or terminal illness. But let me get this straight before we start. This is all about celebrating life. I'm your host, Daniel Cole. Welcome. Welcome to this episode of Life, Death and Happiness. And this time I got a very good friend with me. It's Egil from Denmark. And Egil, can you tell us a little about yourself? And also, welcome and thank you for joining.
Well, thank you for having me. So yeah, we're actually living in the same country, which is cool. Mm-hmm. I'm originally from the States, and was diagnosed with Fanconi anemia at the age of 16. Mm-hmm. And according to statistics, I wasn't going to survive my 22nd birthday. And at the age of 16, this is the type of thing that will kind of freak you out. So I kind of crawled into myself for a while. I didn't want anybody to know about this. I saw it as a weakness, personally. And also growing up, I grew up in this kind of like a skate punk group of kids. And I felt like this, because of that, it was all about being, pretty raw and pretty tough. So if they knew I was sick, then they would see it as a weakness.
Yeah, you don't really want to seem vulnerable among those kind of people.
No, exactly. Yeah, and the kids I grew up with, I mean, I love them to death, but I was just afraid. What were they going to use this? They were going to use this against me. Is what I felt. But my 22nd birthday came around, and my 23rd and 24th and 25th. And at that point, I started to think, well, maybe I was going to be able to survive this thing, and maybe I wasn't going to get sick at all. And don't get me wrong, I still suffered from all the anxiety that a teenager would suffer through. But on the other hand, I also started to get this sense of the importance of little things. And as a teenager, I think that was something that was surprising to me, that I could latch onto these things. A lot of people thought I was older than my years because of that, and I think that's one of the things that Fanconi anemia sneaks up on you with. I mean, there's all this negativity, but there's also this sense of seeing things in a slightly different way. That kind of grew on me over the years.
Yeah, actually, that is something I've tried. I feel myself too, that it gives you a different perspective upon life. Yeah, definitely.
Exactly. Yeah. And yeah, I mean, and we're given this one precious life, and we need to make the most of it. And I think actually I also lived that way as a teenager. I was bold. I was a skinny little kid, but on a skateboard and throwing myself off of large things and breaking my arm and stuff like that. I wasn't really afraid of anything. So yeah, I guess Fanconi anemia threw me through a curve in that regard. But I think the thing that probably colored me the most at that age was just the fact that I really didn't want anybody to know, and I kept it to myself.
Talked about that before, and I know that it's about being vulnerable, and not want to show that side of you. But I've always wondered, was it only among your friends you didn't talk about this, or?
Well, I didn't talk to friends, but I also. I had some conversations with my brother, close relationship to him, and my father as well. But my mother wasn't very open about it. She I think had a sense that she wanted to protect me, and took on this vow of silence in regards to the illness. And I don't think that was very good for her, and I think that I might have provoked that. Okay, So yeah, I mean, it is. Parents react very differently to that kind of thing. And my brother, he just kind of thought I was cool because I was facing these cavernous echo chambers of existential perspectives that most other teens weren't looking into.
He thought it was cool. Or?
He thought it was cool, yeah, and yeah. Well, he just thought, wow, what a tough guy, and all the stuff that you're going through. You're so strong, and that's one of the things that it's also, in my life with this disease, people say a lot. Especially now, I've opened up. I mean, this was when I was 16. I got the diagnosis. That's 29 years ago. So obviously, I'm in a very different place now, and that very much changed. I guess when was that? 2011. Yeah. When this disease kind of turned around and kicked me in the back of the head pretty hard. Because, like I said, I felt like maybe I wasn't going to get sick at all. But then in 2011, it really did start coming at me pretty strong.
Before we could dive into that, I'm kind of curious here because you mentioned that people keep saying, "Oh, you're so strong." How do you react to that? Because I know that I feel very strange about that because I don't feel like I'm strong. I just feel that I've gotten better to roll with the punches.
Oh, yeah. That's something that has changed over time as well. I mean, when I was a teenager, I definitely did not see myself as being strong at all. I did see it as a weakness, as I said. But now, the fact that people see me as strong, I hope in some way that's a reflection of maybe being able to maybe to be able to inspire somebody. I mean, if they see me as strong, what is it that does to them? I mean, can they use what they see in me as a strength? Can they use that for something in themselves? I think that's more important than anything else because no, of course you don't feel strong, and sometimes you feel very much the opposite. But if somebody thinks that I'm strong or sees my story as being or as taking strength to be able to deal with this, then maybe that's something that they will see in a situation that's similar, or if somebody close to them gets ill, then they can also say, hey, I know, or I've at least heard stories about people who can fight this thing, but what other choice do you have, really?
Yeah, you don't have a choice. Okay, right, of course you can always give up, but who does that?
Right, yeah. Well, I'm sure that there are people who do that as well, but that's definitely never been in the cards for me.
It's not even part of the conversation, I guess.
No.
At least for a lot of us, yeah.
Yeah. No.
But I'll get back to that. But in 2011, you said you were kicked hard in the back and you woke up to a new kind of reality regarding this disease.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little about that?
Sure. I mean, everything kind of got turned on its head because, like I said, so time had passed and it went from my diagnosis and all these anxieties that you have as a teenager. And I was getting blood tests every 3 months. They were monitoring my situation, but very, very little. I mean, it didn't feel like it was affecting me. And I was doing everything that any other teenager would do. I was drinking, going out, having fun with my friends, and not really thinking about illness at all. But I was reading up on it. So I would get this thing from the Fanconi Anemia Research Foundation, and they were sending these newsletters. I think it was probably every half year or something, or in the beginning, or every 3 months, and you would be able to read articles about various things. And there was also a handbook, and I was looking at that and getting totally mortified by what it said. So I knew a little bit about
you
about the
disease. Up to date with the scientific part of it and what was happening in the world. You just didn't talk out loud about it.
Right. Yeah. So I had this sense, maybe I'm not going to get hit by all these bad things that I knew about could happen. Cancers and a bone marrow failure and this type of thing. And in 2011, I went to the hospital in Copenhagen, Denmark, and had a biopsy taken from my tongue. I had a biopsy taken after actually, it took a while to convince the doctors to even take the biopsy because one young guy comes in, has something on his tongue. It's very, very rarely cancer.
At least among normal people, yeah.
Right, among normal people. So it took me, I think, probably, I think it was 8 months before they finally took the biopsy. They kept sending me home. If it's still there next time, then we'll.
That's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time, especially in the Fanconi anemia world where cancers develop very quickly. They can, at least.
Mm.
So finally, my wife dragged me in and said, "This time you are not getting out of getting a biopsy." And so we did that. And when I came back for the results, I was telling, "Yeah, it's a little bit sore." He just wanted to know how I felt.
Mm.
So, well, it's a little bit sore and there's a bump there and it's kind of irritating. And he said, the doctor said, "Well, you're not going to have to worry about that bump anymore because we're going to take a larger piece of your tongue. You have cancer." And that hit me like a ton of bricks because I had gone all this time from when I was 16 until then, slowly working my way out of the disease and thinking, "Oh, I'm not going to get hit by all these awful things." And then suddenly being confronted by the fact that all of that was changing now. And maybe this was the first step to all of these other things that I had read about. And just the fact that you have tongue cancer also is just mortifyingly, excruciatingly scary.
Oh, yeah.
So I just kind of like sat down and didn't really know what to do with myself.
Did you bring your wife when you got that result, or?
I did not. I came by myself, and but I did. I called her at work, and she's works with kids, and she was out walking with kids because she wanted to know, so she had her phone on her, and I said, "Well, do you have a place you can sit down?" And she obviously didn't know what she was going to do with herself, and came in as quickly as she could, also totally in shock. And that process was one that yeah, it was an eye opener for me. But it was still caught early, which was very, very lucky. So I do actually consider myself lucky in that regard because I know the stories from other FA patients now, and I know what has happened to them.
Yeah, we know some of them have developed the cancer so quickly that even like 3 months delay would have killed them all straight away.
Yes, exactly.
And
yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah, you could just say that in that disregard about getting the tongue cancer as the first sign of, okay, you really do have Fanconi anemia, you really have to take care of yourself. You and I both had that, and I also got the slow building cancer because I wasn't, when I got there, and you know that story also, that it took me a couple of months to convince them to actually I got the biopsy, just turned out there was no cancer in it. I still wanted to get it removed.
That's right.
And it was not before after that, and I came into, you can call it the slow line. I mean, they didn't think it was cancer, so it was like, yeah, you can come in here like 3 months from now.
Right.
So I get that when you have read about other people with tongue cancers, all kind of things go through your mind when you get that diagnosed. It's like, my God, what am I going to do from here?
Yeah.
So it just, I really relate to what you're saying here.
Well, one of the things was also that I didn't know whether I was going to be able to talk when I came out of this operation. I didn't know whether I was going to be able to taste food. These are some of the things that they tell you, right? They say, well, we can't guarantee these things. If I hit that nerve, then you won't be able to talk. If I hit that nerve, you won't be able to taste anything, which are, pretty serious handicaps.
Definitely.
I mean, I'm very fond of good food, and I'm also very fond of being able to communicate with people. I'm a poet and a musician, and I sing, and so not being able to do those things was absolutely mortifying to me.
Oh, I get that. What did you lose some abilities when you got this surgery in your tongue?
Well, there was a period of rehabilitation. And coming out of the cancer and getting the results that all of it had been taken away, there was no residual anything. It felt like being reborn. And it was spring. I think it was April, and I walked to the King's Garden in downtown Copenhagen, and everything was more green than I think I had ever experienced in my life, and birds singing and flowers blooming, and I just felt like, oh my God, my life is starting over. I had been given this gift, and I'm gonna run off to the Arctic Circle and explore. I'm gonna go to Russia. I'm gonna do all these crazy things that I haven't done, but I just had this feeling that everything was changing. And there was this period of rehabilitation, and I remember that for my wife's birthday, and this was before that. This was March 16th. That I had ordered. I'd booked a table at the best restaurant in the world, which happens to be in Copenhagen, Noma.
Oh yeah.
And at that point, when I had booked that table, I actually didn't know whether I was going to be able to taste the food.
Oh, that must be mortifying.
It was like day to day. It was some days I could taste and some days I couldn't.
Oh,
and on that day, I had a good tongue day. and I'm very, very happy for that, because that would have really bummed me out, not being able to taste the food.
Oh yeah, I never had the chance to go there.
Yeah,
and
it's hard to get a table.
It's like I need to go there someday.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering. That is also why I asked, because even though I can speak almost normally today, I still have this, this tinkling as if your leg is asleep or something like that. That small tinkling you can get. I still have that in a small part of my tongue. I've grown used to it, so I don't really think about it. But if I focus on it, I can feel that, 24 hours a day, all day. But like you, I can actually still taste most things perfectly. Well, in my case, in my left side, if I'm eating something like shrimps, with this very, very delicate taste, I need to place the food in the right side of my mouth to really taste it. It's so weird. But at least I can taste. No complaining here at all.
Yeah. Well, for me, when I get really tired, my tongue will throw me through a loop a little bit, and that's more like I suddenly I feel like I have a hard time controlling my tongue. So I feel like my speech changes. That kind of sense I'll get if I'm really tired.
Same here.
And I don't even know if other people would be able to hear it, but I just obviously, your own voice best, right? So, so that kind of thing.
You can hear. Yeah, I talk to people often, and I'll be like, I can definitely hear that I sound different than before the tongue cancer. I can hear that very clearly. Yeah. It's not something I focus on, but I can hear it.
Yeah.
But other people say they can't hear it. But so just as you mentioned, I think you're used to listening to your own voice 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
I mean, you know how it's supposed to listen, because it did listen like that for your whole entire life.
Right.
So you notice the small differences.
Right.
Yeah.
But the thing is, so after this tongue cancer, a bunch of other things started to happen as well. So I started out with this tongue cancer, and because of that, I also became more vigilant. So I was now trying to amass a certain amount of information, because I didn't want something to happen to me again where I had to wait 8 months to convince a doctor to take a biopsy. But and I also wanted to make sure that I was being tested in a way that was comparable to my situation. And I also wanted to make sure that the doctors weren't going to block me from doing that. So I spent a lot of time trying to figure out what tests I should be taking, and I started learning things about myself that were unfortunate. One of the things is that I learned that I had chromosomal abnormalities.
Okay.
In my bone marrow. And I had one of the things that for FA patients, I don't know exactly who the audience for this is, but one of the things that when you get a bone marrow one of the things that can happen if you're an FA patient is you can have bone marrow failure. So a lot of people get bone marrow aspirates or tests to check what's going on in their bone marrow throughout their lives once they're diagnosed and so on. And a lot of people also get bone marrow transplants, usually at an early age, because their bone marrow just fails, it dies, or something happens. One of the things that can happen, one of the ways that you monitor this is through chromosomal abnormalities. So your chromosomes will change. So after this first cancer, I suggested that a bone marrow aspirate be taken for the first time in my life. Okay. Actually, a second time, because I was diagnosed when I was 16. I had a bone marrow test. Yeah, but I hadn't had one since then. And this is something that doctors who know anything about FA would normally prescribe or ask for to get. So I went to my hematologist and said, "I think we should do this." She's like, "Oh yeah, good idea." Whereas other doctors who know this disease would be like, "What? You haven't had one for 22 years? Are you crazy?" So here I was, kind of being my own doctor, right? And the results came back from that, and there were 2 chromosomal abnormalities. One was monosomy 7, which is relatively dangerous, but it was on the wrong arm. So there's, if you look at a chromosome, there's a short arm and a long arm. Yeah. And I can never remember which one is the good one and the bad one to have a chromosomal abnormality on. But mine was on the better one. And the other one was trisomy 1. So chromosome 1, it has an extra arm, which apparently is pretty common in FA patients. Okay, yeah. But these things, when I go in to see my hematologist and I'm like just chatting it up, so, oh yeah, so what are these results? And being jovial, because here I was and I didn't expect anything. He was fidgeting around and being nervous and said, finally, I have to interrupt you. I really don't know what to tell you about your results. And
he said that?
Which is not a very comfortable place to be with a doctor when they say they don't know what to say, because I mean the amount of confidence that you place in a physician is enormous. And so you want them to have the answers. And that's just not always the case. So
no, especially not with a rare disease, but of course they have a lot of knowledge, but they can know about every disease that exists.
Exactly. Right.
But I would feel uncomfortable too.
Yeah. And this was also kind of a big thing too, because if he's saying that about my bone marrow, then of course immediately I started to think, well, is it because I need a bone marrow transplant? Which was just a frightening thought to me. Yeah. But basically, these 2 chromosomal abnormalities, as they're called, coupled with other counts, blood counts that are low, diagnosed me with something called myelodysplasia, or MDS. And it's a low-grade MDS, but it's a precursor anemia. And along with that, I was also starting to get infections more frequently. I had appendicitis. I had hand, foot, and mouth disease. I had shingles, all of which are pretty burly, not very fun to have.
So your whole immune system started to react to all this.
Yeah, it was clear.
Actually,
yeah. Yeah, and I was trying to figure out, was it because these chromosomal abnormalities were new, or was it something else? And there's no answer to that, because there's no history. I didn't have any bone marrow samples to compare it to.
No, of course not. No,
they couldn't say whether these chromosomal abnormalities were new or not. And I also started to get more cancers.
Yeah, you have had a few, as far as I remember.
Yes, I've had a few. So I had a cancer on my lip as well, and that was a year later. And this one as well was something that the doctors didn't think looked like cancer, and so I did end up waiting for, I think, another 8 or 9 months before they did a biopsy of that one as well.
You gotta be kidding. They didn't make the same mistake twice?
No. They made the same mistake twice.
Oh my. Freaking beep.
So this is now I have become very well acquainted to the medical system in Copenhagen.
Yeah.
And I think that I'm relatively good at navigating it. And of course, there's a question of physicians' egos that needs to be taken care of, while also being firm about what it is you want and need, and trying to figure out how to balance those things, so that you're not like taking over a doctor's job, but you're also telling them that you actually know a lot about Fanconi anemia, which not very many people do, and certainly not the doctor. The doctor knows a lot of things about their area. Like you said earlier, they'll know, like a hematologist will know a lot about blood, a lot about all the diseases that are associated with it. But this one is so rare that they just don't know. So if I can provide them with some information, say, look, I can't, chemotherapy and radiation is not good for an FA patient. It can kill an FA patient. So, okay, then I guess we shouldn't use that to treat your cancers. I mean, that's kind of an important thing to know, right? Yeah. So that type of thing.
Yeah.
But also in regards to what kind of tests you need. And one of them was this bone marrow aspirate, and other ones as well. Another one was, I call it an alien autopsy, where they send, I forget what it's called, but it's an endoscopy, a camera down your throat and into your stomach and stuff. And they started doing that, found things down there as well, dysplasia, and had a stent put in, which put me in the hospital for like 3 months. And because they just botched it and didn't realize how susceptible to infections I was. So it's I wouldn't say, I had a friend who's also an FA patient who said he was a full-time patient, or a professional patient. And I'd say I'm not full-time, but I'm probably, I guess you could say I'm part-time.
Yeah. You've been,
and at least professional.
I've known you for like 4 years now, and you've been a lot more in and out of the hospital and been dealing with a lot of stuff. I know that, and it's no secret that we have shared the same hematologist and have had some of the same issues regarding getting the doctors to actually, I won't say they don't take it seriously, but at least look into this in a different way, and not just, a lot of them are just going by their normal experience with other kind of stem cell diseases and stuff like that. But it's so important, as you said before, that they actually stop up and listen, because you might not be a doctor, but you're kind of an expert too. So that's so vital. I mean,
it is, and but also when you find a doctor who does respect that, and who's willing to listen and willing to take part in a dialogue, hold on to them with hands, feet, teeth, whatever, because they are rare.
You also know I changed to a new hematologist recently, and I was so surprised. My first meeting up there, I went up and I was like, hey, my name is Daniel, and we sat down and had a talk, and we were talking about what kind of checkup I should have. And I found out he had actually read the book about Fanconi anemia.
Wow.
At least the section he was like, but I read in the papers I found on the Fanconi website that you should be checked for this and this and this, but this is not necessary. And I was like, damn. I was so taken back by that. I was really surprised that he actually taken time. And it shouldn't come as a surprise that a doctor would spend like 5 to 10 minutes reading up upon your case, but often that's just not the case. So hopefully I'm in better hands now. But your situation right now, can I ask you, how is everything going right now for you?
as of late, my blood counts have been dropping, which is not good. There's a couple counts that my thrombocytes, platelets, have fallen and are lower than they usually are. It's been a very, very slow drop over a very long time, but it's getting to the point where it's weirding me out a little bit, and especially the neutrophils, which are a white blood cell that fights bacterial infection. That has dropped under what most people call a critical point, and that's also a little bit scary to me. So on the bleeding, on the platelets, I've had some bleeding issues. This past winter was a little bit frightening because I had some biopsies taken in my mouth, and they wouldn't stop bleeding. So first they took the biopsies, and they one of the things that they usually do is they say, well, the anesthetics cause swelling, and that swelling stops the bleeding, so you shouldn't worry. And here is a popsicle to keep it cold, and off I go. So I go down to the lobby, and I'm eating this popsicle, and I realized that every time I take the popsicle out of my mouth, it was a yellow popsicle. It wasn't yellow; it was red. So I figured, it's maybe I should go back up and tell them that their yellow popsicle is the wrong color.
That was one way to put
it. So I go back up, and as I'm going up in the elevator, I realize that my mouth is filling up with liquid. Oh. And it's not because I'm drinking anything. It's actually just filling up by itself. And so I get up there, and I find a nurse, and I'm like pointing at my mouth and trying to figure out, what can I do? And she gives me this dainty little piece of paper, and thinking that I need to spit something out. And when I do, I'm like filling my hand up with blood. Oh, and she's like, "Oh, okay, I understand. You couldn't talk because your mouth was filling up with blood." So she's like, "Do you want to lie down?" "Yeah, sure, I'd like to lie down."
Yeah, please.
"Do you want another popsicle?" "Yeah, I'd like another yellow popsicle that will turn red." And so I do that, and I lie down, and another one of these comic moments at the hospital. The doctor comes in and says, "Oh, so I hear that you're bleeding. I tell you what, I have to go to lunch, and I'll be back, and I'll take a look at it."
So real? Here I was that the answer? Oh my!
It wasn't the answer I was expecting. Let me put it that way.
No.
So here I am, and this nurse comes in and says, "You want some cotton to put in there?" And they put some cotton in my mouth, and it's like, "I need another piece of cotton. It's all red," and they give me another one, and that one turns all red. And the doctor finishes his lunch and comes up and takes a look, and then he takes this he takes out the piece of cotton, and he looks. He's like, "Oh, okay, that's not supposed to happen." So what we're going to do is we're going to put some more of this anesthetic in there because the anesthetic has worn off, and then we're going to see if that stops the bleeding. We're going to try and sew it a little bit, and the anesthetic has worn off, right? So by this time, so they have to. It's not a comfortable kind of thing to do. So they stick me with a needle and more anesthetic in there, and try to sew it, and it's still not closing. It was still bleeding, and so they said, "Okay, we're going to have to cauterize it."
Just a small thing for people listening. If you've never tried this, these needles hurt like hell.
Yeah.
They really do.
Not fun. Yeah.
No.
And,
sorry.
Yeah, and they hurt like more like hell in certain places, like the roof of your mouth.
Oh, yeah.
So so there they are and doing this, and they said, "Well, is it still not bleeding?" They were surprised because it was actually bleeding from the tiny little hole they made the needle had made to administer the anesthetic.
Okay.
So I said, "This is not normal," they said. And that obviously got me nervous because, okay, my platelets are low, but are they that low? So they decided to cauterize. And cauterization is, for those of you who are listening again who don't know, cauterization is like a machine that burns a wound to close it. And so they're doing this on the inside of my mouth. Stick this hot rod in there, 3 different places, sear it, and not necessarily entirely on the place where they had put in the anesthetic, unfortunately. And it's making the sound of like an egg being cracked onto a hot frying pan. And so they do that. And, well, I actually kept bleeding for 3 whole weeks after that. And this was like relatively constant and not like a lot, but enough to that I was constantly spitting. And it scared the living hell out of my little daughter. I have a daughter who's
of course
7 years old, and I didn't realize how much it had scared her, but she actually stood up in her class. She was a first grader. She stood up in her class and said that she was afraid that her dad was going to die because he was bleeding out of his mouth. And it's this type of thing is just really sad to me to hear.
It's heartbreaking,
And of course, do everything to protect this little girl from this ridiculous situation. But yeah, it freaked us all out, and me and my wife and my daughter, pretty bad.
Yeah, I forgot. How did you approach that talk with her? Not to go into details, but I'm just. We will get into the topic about being a parent with
right.
chronic illness or terminal disease or whatever we want to call it. But later on, I was just like, how do you break something like that? How do you approach that subject when the girl is so afraid already? I mean, yeah.
Right. Well, we have always talked about this in the terms of being open and honest. And she has come with me to the hospital. She actually, at one point when I was going through all the stuff in my gut and was in the hospital a lot with this stent, she came. She actually thought I lived there. She said, "Is this where Daddy lives?" Another one of those mortifying and sad experiences. But she's seen me get blood tests, and she's seen me get other tests as well, because we wanted her to know that we weren't hiding things from her, because we thought that was important. In this particular situation, though, we decided that we needed help. And so we contacted a group, which, I mean, it's amazing that this group exists. And I'm sure that they have this type of thing in other countries. But it's a group of psychologists who have produced a group where they donate their time to help kids who have either lost their parents or have a very sick parent.
Oh, I didn't know that existed. That's so good.
In Danish it's called ung og sorg, so young and sorrow, I guess you could say. So I think it's privately funded, or there's like various humanitarian organizations that provide some money to just for the offices and stuff like that.
Oh, such important work, yeah.
Yeah, it's important work. It's very good. And we got her into that, and it took a while to get into it. So when we finally, she had one talk with somebody in there, and it was clearly they were very professional, and it was clear that she appreciated that. But by the time the session or series of sessions that we're going to start, we kind of felt that she had moved on, and we didn't want to remind her of all that.
Yeah.
But they did give us a couple cool tips. One of the tips was be open but not too open. And also to have a calendar so that you write down what days I'm going to the hospital.
Yeah.
So that she kind of has some kind of a sense that she knows what's going on and when things are going to happen. So we'll do that. We'll have like a monthly calendar, and we'll write down, okay, on these days, Daddy's going to the hospital. And also to be very, very clear when it's not something that's life-threatening or in any way dangerous. So it's not dangerous, I'll tell her. And that's most of the time, it is all the time, actually. I haven't had any cancers for a while, so that's the way we kind of deal with it now. So there are certain things that we don't talk about when she's in the room, and we'll, the scary, really scary stuff. But we also keep her in the loop so that she knows what's going on, and to keep her from being scared. We do this schematic approach and say, on these days, Daddy's going to the hospital and he's doing these things, and it's not dangerous.
I think I will actually cover that when my son gets a little older.
It's a good tip.
Let's stay on this topic for a bit, because now we're already there. How do you feel about being a parent while having something like Fanconi anemia? I can admit, we talked a little about it before we started recording, that we know some people have a lot of opinions about having children when you're in this kind of situation.
Right.
But I would like for you to talk a little about how do you feel about this part? I mean, you love your daughter. I've been with both of you plenty of times. I know you have a very good relationship with her. And you also talk about this, that it scared her when you were bleeding out your mouth. And, you can't avoid these kind of situations. It's almost impossible when dealing with something like this. And you have found a good way to kind of prepare her a little with the calendar. But how can I say this? How do you, in general, deal with being a parent at the same time as looking out for your own health and providing for your family and stuff like that?
Well, the first thing I would say is that I absolutely love being a parent, and I would not trade it for the world. It's an absolutely amazing experience to watch this little girl grow, and in every single little facet of her very young life. Just watching that happen is amazing, and to be able to also influence that in various ways, and I can't help it. I'm not, if I'm, for example, really into music, so I'll play a lot of music for her, and then she'll say, "Daddy, I want to listen to the Beatles." Now I'll just be so proud, because of course young kids should listen to the Beatles, and that kind of thing. And it's absolutely amazing experience. And it's also very much a part of the natural drive of any human being to want to be a parent as well. And for FA patients, having children is not necessarily very easy.
No, it can be very, very difficult for most people.
It can be very difficult. So I also feel extremely lucky to be able to have fathered a child, and that's it's a rarity in the Fanconi anemia world. But as you mentioned, there are people who have opinions about that, and I've gotten some flack in that regard as well. Last year, I put out an album under the name Wall to Wall. And this was an album that was actually born out of my very first cancer back in 2011, because my good friend and partner in crime, I would call him, in my musical partner in crime, my best friend, and he told me, you need to survive this thing because we're going to make an album together. And that really stuck to me, and got me through some dark spots in this long period of illness. And it didn't necessarily have to take 7 years to produce this album, but I mean the illnesses, but also life happened. I got kids and he got kids, and then all of a sudden last year, finally, we finished this album. And I felt like with this album, because it had such a connection to Fanconi anemia and to my first cancer, that was so much part of the story of the album that I decided that this was going to be my coming out moment in regards to Fanconi anemia.
Yeah.
So when I was 16, nobody was supposed to know about it, and now I was going to tell the world. And so I did that. I as part of the part of the press for this album, I told people that this was my story and this is where the album was coming from. And it's not like a cancer album. It's an album about getting the best out of life and viewing life as something beautiful and amazing, and even the most minute details, like the rings that a cold glass will make on a table on a hot day. That kind of thing. Those details are beautiful and amazing, and they're in the album. So one of the things was there was this interview in a Danish newspaper called Ekstrabladet. And in that interview, I talked having a daughter, and people had opinions about that afterwards, and they were very critical of a sick person having children at all, and whether that was morally acceptable to do that. And I can understand at least one of these people where she was coming from. She had herself grown up with a father who was very ill, and it had had a profound effect on her life afterwards because her father died when she was young. But for me, there's more to it than that. I think that there's also a relationship to my wife. And wanting to be able to have a child with her was a big deal for me and to her as well. And we both wanted to have kids, and that was something that was important. I also wanted I didn't want her to be alone, my wife. So that was part of it. And the other thing is also, like we talked about before turning on the mic, beginning of this interview, we talked about, well, I don't know. I didn't know how long I was going to live.
No.
And here I am. My daughter's 7 years old, and I've had so many wonderful experiences with her, and she and I love each other to the moon and back again, as that famous kids book says. And so I think you have to be careful when talking about that type of thing. I mean, if you can't care for your child, and I think that's obviously an issue, but I think that we're doing a pretty good job, and we're doing the best job we can. And I think that there's other parents who are perfectly healthy, are fucking up their children a lot worse than we are. I don't know if it's okay to swear on your podcast.
No, it's totally fine.
Okay.
Actually, I use that as an argument because there was a girl in the Fanconi anemia community who got a lot of backlash for wanting a child and writing about that in public. Because people was like, oh, you are so selfish and stuff like that.
Yeah, that's the same that I got.
And as you talked about, I understand where people are coming from, but there's so much more to it. And I can actually remember that. Oh, sorry. My microphone was dropping here. Start over here. But I actually do remember
Microphone drop.
Yeah, microphone. No, I do remember that you and I and our, your wife and my wife, we went on a trip to to Florida a couple of years ago, and your wife and my wife had a long talk, also about this, about having children. Also, as you mentioned before, you have raised this child together, and the child will still be there with her the day you're gone. And it's the same case here. She talked to your wife about that, and we ended up. I can't provide with a child. I just can't. Like a lot of people with this disease. So we got a donor like that, and maybe to some people it's stupid to go, to go such a long way to get a donor child when having something like this. But as you mentioned, there's so much love going on, and isn't it better to have maybe your parent for 5, 10, or 15 years and have a life filled with love than having actually shitty parents for your whole life?
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
What is best? I mean, I'm not saying that other people without Franconia can't provide for their children and can't be nice parents. Of course they can. It's just this whole conversation. It seems like a lot of people, when they come out and lashing at people with a chronic illness or a terminal disease for getting children, it's like they focus on the very last moment when you die and the child or the wife or both are left behind. But there's so many things you can do, so many positive experiences you can have together for 5, 10, 20, maybe 30 years.
And I would also like to add to that my good friend, my best friend, Palle, he also lost his father. But I remember talking to Palle at one point where he said that there was a point of, obviously he was very saddened by the loss of his father, but there was a point in his life where he found out that instead of being sad that his father wasn't there when he was experiencing something, he instead reflected on how his father would have felt if he was there, and that was comforting, and it made him happy. So to the people who are critical in that regard, I would like to say that perspective is there as well. And it's also, I think, very much up to the individual person to frame that situation. Is the glass half full or is the glass half empty?
Oh yeah.
Did I have a wonderful time with my father while he was here, or do I constantly miss him while he's gone?
You're right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I totally get where you're coming from, what you're saying here. And of course, I'm in pretty much the same situation as you, even though my kid is a lot younger right now. So I just think it is an important topic, because many people feel like, oh, is it even good? Am I being bad for wanting a child in my life when I'm under these circumstances? To me, it's like, no matter what, fill your life with things that matters to you, and nothing will ever matter more to you than having a child. I mean, so if that's your dream and you are going through something like this, it can be Fanconi anemia, it could be a lot of other diseases like that. I mean, don't listen to the negative people, because they're not in your shoes. I mean, it's easy to sit on the sideline and be judgmental. But you got the right, like everybody else, to feel that kind of love and have this happiness in your life.
I most definitely agree with that.
At least that's how I look upon it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's definitely my perspective on it as well, and I kind of joke with friends about being a parent, because I feel like it's one giant failure after the next. I mean, how many mistakes do you make as a parent, right? But everybody does that. Right. But everybody does that. Everybody makes mistakes as a parent. And there's no such thing as the perfect parent, definitely not. And I don't know. I think that like you said, it's important to do what you can to make yourself happy. And I also believe that in the process, if you have a child, that you can also make that child happy, even if you pass away before your time. I think so.
Also, I think that it can, of course, there can be some situations like the one you talked about with your daughter when you start bleeding, that is not comfortable. It gets scary, of course. But on the other hand, to have a mom or dad with a serious illness, you can, it's not a gift, but you can learn so much from it. I mean, I know you, and I know a lot of other people in our situation that really, really try to live life to the fullest. I mean, they try to, seize the day. They try to live day by day, get the best out of it, not to worry about the big problems before they actually knock on the door. There's a lot of good stuff here that you can teach your children about. And not just talk about it, but just showing them how to deal with it. I mean, I might have to go to the hospital to get some tests, and that maybe I don't like the thought of that, but I can still be happy. I can still provide a lot of positivity at the same time. So I think you can learn them a lot about perspective. I mean, the world is not crumbling down just because you're going for a test or something like that. I mean, I just think we have a lot to offer.
I think we do too. I definitely, I definitely don't want to negate the fact that, of course, I worry about leaving her behind, and I also worry about or am saddened by the fact that I might not be able to see her graduate from high school, or I won't see her. I won't meet her first boyfriend, or see her get married, or all of these successes that she might have, and the opposite as well. Comfort her when she's down as a teenager. I don't know if I'm going to experience those things or not. I don't. And there are definitely times where I think that bothers me and it hurts me. But all I can do is say that I'm going to be there for her now. And I think that's more than a lot of other parents say about their kids, because they don't think about this possibility of exiting stage left at an early date.
To us, it's a thing that we just have to deal with.
Right.
And I
but it's just also just it's just. I mean, I remember I was at this this party for a young girl. She was like a sweet 16 party in Denmark. You're age 14, but it was a sweet 16 party, and the father's brother went up, and he had older kids. Just remember, just enjoy every moment now, because you're not going to get that time back. And he's saying that in retrospect. And I don't know whether he actually did that, like he was there now throughout those kids' lives. But I make a serious point in being there. I really, really think about that a lot, and I kind of soak it up every time she smiles and does something funny, or says something quirky or whatever, or is clumsy and whatever, this type of thing. I make a point of that, and I don't know if everybody does that, but I think everybody should.
Everybody should actually do that. Yeah,
it's one of the things that it's one of the side effects of living with an illness like Fanconi anemia, is that you think in those terms, maybe more than others.
Actually, we went out for a brunch buffet like 3 or 4 weeks ago, me and my wife and my son, and we had a great time. And My son is like, he's talking to everybody. He's like 10 months old, and he's trying to get a conversation going with everybody. I mean, I'd never
Awesome.
talked to so many strangers like after we got him.
That's great.
And at a time, there was this waitress who kept passing our table, and she smiled at him. And by the end of it, she actually came down and she was like, I gotta tell you guys, you have saved my morning and my day. And we were like, what? So I've been walking by here, and the two of you have just been there. You've been sitting with your son. He has been happy, and you have been actually present with him. Most people who come in here, they spend half their time looking at their phones and doing other stuff, almost ignoring the kids. But you've been there. You sat there, and you just seemed like you had a wonderful time, the three of you.
What a very nice thing to say.
It was so nice of her, and it lightened up our day too.
Right.
I was like, can't express how much that meant to hear her say that. And I was just happy that it actually did something positive to her too.
Right. Yeah.
And this is what it's about for me. Just as you mentioned in your case here, being present, being there, experience every single minute as much as you can. I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm like everybody else. I can be on my smartphone and be like, yeah, okay. Don't have time right now. It happens. But most of the time, I try to every single day to have these moments where we just have something special together. And I try to. He can't talk yet, so I can't say I'm listening to him. Not in that sense, at least. But so.
Well, you can still have a conversation more than you know. Yeah.
Just look him into the eyes, and you have this whole nonverbal thing going on, and it's just it matters to me because, and I don't know how long I can have these things with him, so I want to be there. I want to share these experiences. I forget what you were saying before. Yeah. It matters so much and makes you appreciate these small things in life.
Yeah.
Together with your child so much.
And of course, it's definitely not to say that other people don't do that, but I get the impression that my impression is that when you have a terminal illness, that maybe you're just a little bit more attuned to that. And I think I noticed that already after being diagnosed. I mean, and one of the things, I have this very clear memory of having conversations with my mother, and she was shocked to hear me say, there are things in this world that you can't control. And it came as an absolute surprise to hear that coming out of a 16-year-old's mouth. Or talking to my dad about a lunar eclipse and just being absolutely enthralled by that. The lunar eclipse, it was my first lunar eclipse. Absolutely amazing experience, just as I've carried around with me ever since. 16 years old. These types of things, I kind of felt like they meant more to me because I felt like maybe I was going to die as a 22-year-old. So this was, now here I am experiencing a lunar fucking eclipse, and I feel tiny. I'm on this tiny little sphere, and up there there's this moon just hanging there. And it's round, perfectly spherically round. It was a huge experience. I don't know.
No, I and to be honest, I would lie if I told people that I never think about death or think about having this disease. Even though I try to go, day by day and just, go to work and have a normal conversation with my wife and do stuff like that. But I do think about it often. Also, maybe more often than I'd like to admit, actually.
Oh, yeah.
But it's always present. I know that this will kick me down the stairs sooner or later. And I hate that feeling, but it's about finding a balance where you use it to kind of fuel your life, or use it for something positive as much as you can.
Mm.
I mean,
and live your life to the fullest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you about, now I mentioned the word death, and we usually go around that topic because it means a lot of different things to a lot of different people.
Mm-hmm.
But when you have a terminal illness, it will always be present in some way in our thoughts. So how do you feel about it? Have you talked about it with your wife and at home, and how do you deal with it?
Well, it's a difficult subject. It's a very taboo subject, and obviously it's something that everybody has a different perspective on, and of course, when you're in a relationship, there's somebody who will die, and there's somebody who will be left behind. It's two very, very different perspectives on death, and very different things that go into that, right? So on the one hand, I can feel like there are things I'm going to miss, like I mentioned earlier with my daughter. There are things like a sense of something unfulfilled, but I'm not being left behind, and I think that is something that hurts me the most is leaving my wife and my daughter behind. I think the pain that they will go through in that regard is painful to me. And I just kind of feel like when my time comes, I guess that's just the way it is. And I think that they probably think that way about their own death as well. But being left behind is terrible and horrible. So what can you do to prepare for something like that? Well, I don't think there's that much that you can do. I mean, there's I guess one thing would be to talk about it and say it out loud. I guess there's also some practical things that you can talk about, like bank accounts and last will and testaments and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There's also, do you want to make videos? That's one of the things that I thought might be cool is should I be making videos for my daughter so that she can see them when she gets older? Or should that just be like a spontaneous thing that just happened? I felt at one point that that's something that I wanted to do, make videos for her, like this old wise man saying, "Be careful for the boogeyman" or something, and it seemed kind of funny to me to think in those terms because I don't know what her life is going to be like when she's 21 and looking at a video that she's been told not to look at until she was 21. And I don't know what the world's going to look like. I mean, maybe there's Copenhagen is underwater and she's living in the mountains in Norway or something, who knows? So.
Funny way to look about it. Yeah, I've had the exact same thought about making videos like that. And I still think I will do it, but not now.
Yeah.
It will be something I do when I feel that the time is getting nearer. I do think I will sit down and make those. But I promise you I will not sound like a wise old man. Probably just like a goofball.
Yeah, maybe making a video of you playing video games, for example, that would be a cool thing.
Like we actually
check it out. Check out this game. Yeah. See, there you go.
Now here is lesson number 1500 in gaming history.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, another thing that I think about when thinking about death is that it's also something that changes a lot. So it's very much based on mood and on a lot of different kind of situations. I think a lot about loss because my cousin died recently, and I was shocked by that because it came very suddenly. He had a heart problem, and he was younger than I was, and being the one who had Fanconi anemia, I did not expect to outlive him.
No, of course not.
So that came as a shock to me. Gave me a little bit of a sense of reminder, I guess, because it had been a while since I had lost somebody close to me. What that would be like. And I do miss him quite a lot. I do. But I also have very positive memories of him, and I carry those around with me. And that comforts me in regards to a situation where I might not be here anymore, that my wife and daughter will have positive memories of me. But it can get me down, too. It really can. It can, of course. I mean,
of course it can.
It'd be ridiculous to.
This sounds weird for some of the people who've been listening to all the episodes, but I kind of know you a lot better than a lot of the other people who've been on the podcast. So when we talk about this topic, I have a different feeling and perspective upon it, because I'm thinking about how we here at home we deal with this as a family, how we prepare for it and what will happen when I'm not here. But at the same time, I can't stand the thought of you leaving before me, or some, we are a few from Denmark who know each other very well, and it's just like, it scares me. It's so weird, because when I'm at the hospital, when I am going in for some test, I know it can be good, I know it can be bad. No matter what happens to me, I can handle that.
Right.
Because it's, quote unquote, it's just me. I mean, I know what's going on inside my own body, but I hate the thought of anybody I care for
That's
going through something like this. It's so, it's mind blowing for me. It's like, that scares me more than anything else.
Right.
I mean,
but that's what then you can then also project that onto your own and think about the people who you would be leaving behind.
Exactly.
So that's definitely something that provides some perspective. Yeah, that's much worse.
But no matter what, it's a deep topic, but I think it's also important to talk about. And
oh, definitely, yeah, I agree. But I mean, I think another thing is that, and I don't know exactly who your listeners are, but I mean, there's definitely a question of how that kind of how that topic develops over time. I mean, you were diagnosed as a child, and are have survived this for so long now. I was diagnosed as a 16-year-old, and I'm 45 now. And I think that this is also something that develops over time. And I've noticed, I mean, you and I have now both gone to quite a few of these adult Fanconi anemia meetings where you meet other people who have Fanconi anemia, and some of them are very young, and some of them are new to the game, and others are like, as they say in Danish, old rats. Which means that you're like, you've been in the game for a long time, and
they're veterans,
veterans, and it's interesting to hear these perspectives that are recognizable to an earlier you. So a young kid comes in, he's 18 years old, and he's angry, like pissed off. Man, I relate to that. I totally remember being pissed off and being like, "Why me? What the fuck?" And just being mad at the world, and nobody understands me. I'm like one of a gazillion people who has this disease, and it's cool to be here because there's other people who have it, which is weird. But fuck everybody else. That perspective, and to now be 45 and a different perspective on it, and I don't know if it's an aged perspective or what it is, but just being a different place in life.
Yeah.
I mean, you also get it. Everybody gets a different perspective on life when they have kids.
Oh yeah.
That's just natural for every human being, I think.
And
Hopefully.
For I'm going to say something here, and please don't think I'm an asshole, okay? But but when
I'll
I hear
try.
these angry kids at 18, 17, mad at life and all that, I mean, a part of me feel the anger because I felt it myself, and I understand what they're going through. And a different part of me is also almost feeling like, the old Monty Python skits where they're talking about the young ones having it easy. I mean, yeah, you're talking about. Back in my days, we didn't even have the internet. We couldn't even connect with other people from Copenhagen. What are you? What are you complaining about? You got tons of people to talk about.
That's hilarious. Why would I get mad at you about that?
I know it's
That's
not fair, but I
hilarious.
can't help but it just popped up in my mind. Be like, sometimes I feel just like a little fling of that thought. I mean, yeah, you got it so easy. I mean,
what you want to
before I met anyone else. I mean,
well, what you want to do for a kid like that is just try and give them some kind of perspective, and I guess I probably wouldn't do it back in my day.
no, definitely not.
That's hilarious. But I would love to do it sometime just for the fun of it. But but yeah, no, and I agree that you want to try and give them some perspective. Maybe they'll latch onto something that you say because you say, well, "Hey, man, I've been there. I know what that's like, and I feel for you, man, because that sucks. It's not fun to be there."
Yeah, and all we can do is.
But just so you know, I'm older and I don't feel that way anymore.
But also,
and maybe that.
I can't teach the younger people with terminal disease how to live a good life and how to live a perfect life. I mean, I'm not a poster child. I did drink, I did smoke, and I did all the stuff that I'm not supposed to do. But what I can do is talk about my situation. I can show that I'm a living proof that you can have a long life. Also, post a bone marrow transplantation. I mean, that's part of. I mean, each year I try to post on all these forums that are about Fanconi anemia. Oh, this year will be 35 years since I got my bone marrow transplantation.
Yeah.
And I mention that not because I'm not celebrating each year. I'm not going out. I'm not inviting the whole family for dinner. Walking around with the flags and be like, yoo-hoo! That's. But I like to tell about this, each year because I know a lot of people still have this feeling about, oh, I will never turn 30, or I'll never turn 40, or I will never have a wife, or never have a kid. To me, it's just important to tell that story. Just lay out the information to people who might not know that it is actually possible.
Yeah. And I think that's great. And if I had met you as a 16-year-old, then maybe I wouldn't have thought that I was going to die when I was 22.
But that was the case back then. I mean, I was told I would not go. I would never be 13. That was the first thing I heard.
Yeah.
I mean,
13. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, we're pushing the bar on that one, though.
Oh, hell yeah.
us old fogies.
Sometimes I tell some of the younger people with their faith that, okay, I might try to set a record here with 35 years past, but I'm pushing for 40 and more. I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. And you better beat my record someday, because if you don't, I will come back from the death and I will haunt you, okay? You better survive. You better go to checkups and be smart about it, because you're going to have a long life. Also, I'm going to kick your ass for it.
Good. That's awesome. That's totally good. Yeah. Which is true, I mean, and the fact that people are surviving with FA longer than they were back then is testament to modern medicine. And
hang on for a second. It's going all robotic, your voice. Okay, you're back to normal. Can you?
I am actually a robot.
You're actually a robot. That explains a lot.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel like a robot.
Oh, yeah.
No, and what was I saying? I was just saying that a testament to modern medicine that people with Fanconi anemia and other terminal illnesses are surviving longer now. I don't think that people should ignore the seriousness and think that they will survive forever. But I think that if you live every moment as if it were your last, and keep doing that, then you will have a very, very good life. And if it lasts longer, then you will have a very, very good and long life, which is fantastic.
You need to let yourself dream.
Yes, you definitely do.
Because
Hey, I went to college, and that was something. FA patient college? No, that's not going to happen. Got an education. I went on to I hung out in Hollywood for a summer, and I went off to Denmark and have been living here for 1,000 years now, and have been doing all these things that are fun and mean a lot to me. And like you said, living my life to its fullest as best I can.
it's so important. I mean,
I agree.
yeah, and you. When I look upon your life, or for the time I've known you, I mean, you've been out, you've been helping making movies, and you have made an album. You've done so many good things, at least from my perspective. And for me, it's just good to see somebody chasing their dreams, to be like, yeah, I need to take care of this, and I need to go to my appointments, but still, I have a life to live.
Yeah, I think that's
Oh,
important.
that's so cool. I respect.
Well,
that.
I pay for it in other ways, but I think it's important.
But you're still chasing those dreams, and I try to do the
Yes, I
same.
am.
And sometimes I can have this gut feeling that maybe I shouldn't get into this project, because what if I can't finish that?
Right,
But I mean,
right.
that's just not the right way to approach anything.
No,
So I've tried to turn it around and be like, yeah, I'm gonna do it anyway, okay?
that's great, Daniel. I think that's so good that you're doing that, because it is extremely important, but it's also very difficult. It's a matter of priorities and making choices, and sometimes it can seem extremely silly and stupid, but it's also very honest. And I think that's an important thing is to be honest to yourself.
You need to.
Yeah.
You have to be that. You have to be honest to yourself.
But that's difficult for people, who, for anybody, I'd say. But maybe, I mean, some people with Fanconi say that it's easier for people with Fanconi to chase their dreams in that way, because you have this other element of thinking that there's a time constraint. And I don't know if that's true or not, but I just think that it's just important to do it. And if Fanconi is going to help me in that way, well, then thank you. Then I got something good out of that disease.
And I want to get into the last topic, just to end on a more positive note.
Sure.
So, no, I still think there's been a lot of positivity in the talk, but just like, I wonder, what is happiness to you? How do you fill your life with positive stuff, and what makes you tick, what makes you happy, and get up in the morning and be like, yeah, another day?
Well, we've talked about a number of those things already, and there's my daughter, and my wife, my family, good people. Being surrounded by good people, I think, is very important. And I have a slight aversion to people who are not that, and have also worked with people like that as well. Who, and I think that's a learning process for anybody in reality. But to try and, I guess, just kind of stick to the winners and stick to people who you appreciate and who appreciate you, and who you can do good things with. For me, I think also in beyond the inner circle of family and friends, I am very, very connected to this creative vein of thinking, and I spend a lot of time trying to think in terms of creativity. I've written, I think, 5 books of poetry now, all of which have been published except for the last one. I'm working on that. And I've also produced a lot of music, and that gives me an unsurmountable amount of joy. Like I said, my best friend Palle and I have put together this band called Wall to Wall, and we're working on new music now for that, which is amazing. And I wish that I could just work on that incessantly, because it does actually provide me with incredible amounts of energy and joy. This past weekend.
You very shortly here. It's about Wall to Wall, because where can people listen to your music? Where can they can go buy the album, of course, but where can they find it?
Well, you can stream it just about everywhere. The band is called Wall to Wall, and the album is called Waiting. You can stream it just about everywhere. You can also buy it on our website, which is walltowall.dk. You can buy it on vinyl there, actually.
Oh, that's cool. I like that. That's pretty cool.
Different colored vinyl,
actually.
Yeah, it's fun. But that we've spent, that is something that just provides me with so much happiness. It really does. And these new songs, I'm so proud of them. Having so much fun with that. And actually, new news on that front is that we were approached by an Oscar-winning director, documentary film director, who asked whether we wanted to produce some music for him. And I'm not going to say who it is, because it's not 100% in place yet, but a very exciting prospect.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I'm very excited
about
that.
I'm very happy for you guys. Also, to the listeners, I will provide a link below this podcast, so you can.
Oh, cool.
So you can find it easily. You
Cool.
You should really listen to this album. It's so good.
Thanks, man. But also, I also storytelling is a big deal for me. I really enjoy storytelling. So I work in the film business, and I'm developing stories with various directors for production, and I enjoy that a lot. I think that storytelling is important, because it's such a big part of our lives in general. And the more you tell stories, the more that you tell people your own story. I think also that it's a way to connect with people on so many different levels, and it can be extremely inspiring to hear people's absolutely amazing stories. Whether it's from a real world story, or if it's a fictional story that has some kind of influence on the real world. It's a way of communicating across boundaries, and that provides me with a great deal of joy as well.
I feel we all need, I think, to find these things in our life that matters and give us happiness and make us creative. I think
I agree.
That can help a lot with many things, and also
it can actually. It can be very therapeutic as well. I mean,
definitely.
I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to be that way, but sometimes it is. I mean, I can write in so many different types of situations, and it can be therapeutic sometimes. It can also be something that can dig me out of a hole. It can also be something that's just fun or interesting, or it can be a tool for so many things.
And I can also admit that when I started making this podcast, it was because I wanted to give people the chance to tell their stories. But at the same time, I can admit that I'm learning a lot, okay?
Yeah.
I thought in the beginning it was just a way to get people to talk. But from each episode, when I talk to people and they share their thoughts and, the stories about their life, I love this bit. And that is so therapeutic as hell for me too, because
Right, of course.
so that is. I usually say that I don't have any big talents. I can talk shit and I can talk and keep talking and I never shut the hell up. That is my thing, okay? So that is why I wanted to make something like a podcast, or that is my way of doing things. That is my way of being creative, or making something that other people can hopefully enjoy.
Well, I think it's great that you're doing it.
Thank you. But I also just mean that each person has to find out what makes them tick and what makes them feel creative and feel like they're giving something back to other people or the world or whatever you want to call it. I mean, I think creativity in all its different forms and shapes can be such a good thing.
Definitely. I agree.
Well, Egil, I don't know if you have anything you want to add before we stop. You will get the chance. Yeah.
I don't think so. I guess both you and I are going to the adult meeting for Fanconi anemia patients later this month. And if anybody else there is listening, it'd be great to meet you there. For those of you who are going, look forward to meeting you there. Put it that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Same here. And to the listeners out there, I'm already working on a few names for the next episode. So I don't care if I'm traveling or not. The episode after this will also be up in 14 days. So don't you worry. I'm not taking a break just because I'm going away for a few days. Ain't gonna happen. So I do hope we have some more interesting stories to share. And I'm sure I'll also get to talk to some people when I'm in Chicago. So we'll definitely be back. But thank you so much for joining me today, Egil. It has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Always happy to give you a possibility to talk about the things that matters to you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Take care, and to the listeners, please go and subscribe to the podcast so you get a notification every time a new episode comes up. I don't know where you're listening to this from, but you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Overcast, Castbox, most podcast providers worldwide, actually. So please hit us a subscribe. That will actually, and if you want to rate us, please do that too, because it helps us getting noticed by more people out there. Also, people who maybe don't have a terminal illness or don't know about cancer or Fanconi anemia. And we want to reach as many people as possible. But thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for listening to tonight's episode of Life, Death, and Happiness. If you like this, please do us a big favor and head over to iTunes, Overcast, Spotify, or wherever you're listening to this podcast from, and subscribe to us. If you also give us a good rating, it will help us a lot reaching much more people. So I will appreciate that a lot too. Also, you can of course follow us on Facebook and Twitter and help us spread the word through there. My name is Daniel, and thank you so much for listening.